He teased him, pushed him, and thought he could handle the fire. But Dylan's punishment was coming, and Jace didn't know whether to fear it or crave it. Every glance, every smirk, every controlled move pulls him deeper into a game he can't escape. Watch as desire collides with danger. Subscribe, like, and comment to see who will truly have control. Jace had a talent for getting under people's skin, but with Dylan it was an art. Dylan Marlowe wasn't just the new security consultant. He was the type of man who carried silence like a weapon. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in tailored black suits that hugged strength rather than flaunted it. His voice was deep, steady, clipped at the edges like he measured every syllable before letting it loose. The kind of man who rarely smiled, never joked, and reportedly shut down a full department meeting with a single raised eyebrow. Naturally, Jace decided he wanted to make him crack. They worked in the same private firm, but their roles lived in different worlds. Dylan assessed risks, threats, breaches. Jace handled marketing clients and campaign launches. Their paths shouldn't have crossed often, but Jace made sure they did. A coincidental coffee delivery. A misplaced file dropped off at Dylan's desk. A comment here, a smirk there. It was harmless fun. At least it was supposed to be. The first sparks came during the quarterly retreat. An unnecessary, overfunded weekend in a luxury hotel that Jace adored for its buffet, and Dylan endured like a prison sentence. The company had booked out half the rooftop lounge for a team mixer, all glass walls and city lights stretching like glitter below. Jace spotted him instantly. Dylan stood near the balcony, hands behind his back as if guarding the skyline. His tie was undone, just slightly, showing a tease of throat. The dim golden lights softened the sharp cut of his jaw, and for a second, Jace forgot how to breathe. Dangerous, Jace murmured to himself, already smiling. I like dangerous. He slid through the crowd, weaving between coworkers until he reached Dylan's side. You look like you're planning to escape, Jace said, resting his elbow on the railing. Dylan's eyes cut to him, dark, slow, observant. Just taking a moment. A moment to brood? Jace pressed. Or a moment to stare dramatically into the city like a fallen angel. A faint tightening appeared at Dylan's jaw. Not anger, restraint. Jace grinned. Oh, he loved that. Before Dylan could respond, their manager approached with a tray of drinks for a forced team bonding toast. And that's where things went a bit wrong. The manager handed Dylan a glass, but as Dylan turned, Jace nudged the tray. Accidentally or intentionally, he still didn't know, and the drink sloshed, splashing onto Dylan's sleeve and chest. The room gasped. The manager sputtered apologies. Co-workers stared. Jace froze. Dylan slowly looked at the ruined fabric, then at Jace. His expression didn't change, but something colder, firmer, more dangerous settled behind his eyes. Not rage, no. Rage was loud. This was quiet. This was worse. Jace swallowed. I didn't mean. Dylan stepped closer, close enough for Jace to smell faint cedar and something darker beneath it. He leaned in, speaking low enough for only Jace to hear. Careful. Just one word. Simple. But it slid down Jace's spine like a heated fingertip. Then Dylan left the room. Jace spent the rest of the mixer trying to laugh off his embarrassment, but his heart kept replaying that moment. The warning, the tone, the way Dylan had looked at him as if he could see every intention Jace didn't say aloud. And maybe Jace should have let things settle there. But curiosity was a devil with Jace's face. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the hotel hallway as people rushed between conference rooms for workshops. Jace was halfway through a burnt cup of coffee when a firm hand closed around his forearm and turned him sharply. Dylan. He didn't yank him, just guided him deliberately into an empty side room. The door clicked shut behind them. Jace blinked up. Good morning to you two? Dylan didn't speak at first. He just looked at him, really looked like he was analyzing the shape of Jace's breath. His sleeves were rolled up now, exposing forearms lined with muscle. There was no tie today, just an open collar and a rigid posture that screamed control. What happened last night? Dylan's voice was low, steady. Was it intentional? No, Jace said quickly. Then, because he couldn't help himself, mostly, Dylan stepped closer, Mostly? Jace shrugged, heat creeping into his cheeks. I was teasing you, but I wasn't trying to ruin your suit. Silence stretched. Not uncomfortable. Charged. You've been teasing me for weeks, Dylan said at last. Well, Jace flashed a grin. You make it very tempting. Dylan's eyes darkened, not with anger, but something far more dangerous. Jace. Yes. You don't know what you're asking for. The air thickened, pulling tight around them. Jace's pulse jumped, a traitor dancing beneath his skin. I'm not asking for anything, he whispered. Exactly. Dylan's tone dropped, deep enough to vibrate. You don't even realize what you're provoking. Jace swallowed, finding himself stepping backward until his spine touched the wall. Dylan followed, not touching, just close enough that Jace could feel heat radiating off his chest. For someone who works in marketing, Dylan murmured, you're remarkably bad at reading danger signs. That, Jace exhaled, sounds like an overestimated threat. Oh, it is, Dylan said. Extremely. Jace's breath hitched. Dylan leaned in, voice brushing Jace's ear like a slow drag of velvet. If you keep pushing me, I will push back. And I won't be gentle. Every inch of Jace went still, except his heartbeat, which leaped against his ribs like it was trying to climb out. You shouldn't want this. Yeah, you're assuming I mind? Jace whispered back. Dylan pulled away just enough to search his face, eyes sharp and unreadable. Understand something. His voice softened into a warning that felt like a promise. If you tease me again, I'll make sure you learn what consequences feel like. Jace felt his legs tremble. He'd wanted to provoke Dylan. He just didn't expect Dylan to provoke back. Slowly, Dylan stepped away, giving Jace room to breathe again. He adjusted his cuffs, regained his composed exterior. Stay out of trouble today, he said, turning toward the door. Jace didn't trust himself to speak. Not when his skin buzzed with leftover heat and his mind replayed that whispered threat on a loop. Dylan opened the door, paused, and glanced back with one final, unreadable look. And Jace. Jace's head jerked up. Why, yeah. Next time, Dylan said softly, I won't walk away. The door closed. Jace pressed a hand to his chest, trying to steady the pounding beneath his palm. He should stop. He knew he should. But damn it, he loved the way Dylan's voice had sounded when he promised consequences. And Jace had always been terrible at resisting temptation. Dylan didn't speak to Jace for the rest of the conference. Not a glare. Not a warning. Not even a passing glance. And that was somehow worse. Jace tried to act normal during the workshops, scribbling half-hearted notes, nodding at presenters, pretending he wasn't subconsciously searching every room for a tall, silent storm of a man in a sharp suit. But Dylan was a master of disappearing. One moment he'd be at the back of the room, arms folded, eyes scanning the floor like a hawk. The next, gone without a trace. By the time the retreat ended and everyone returned to the firm's headquarters the next morning, Jace felt like he had swallowed electricity. His chest buzzed with anticipation, impatience, and something he refused to name. He didn't know what he expected from Dylan. Maybe a smirk, a dark look, another whispered warning that would slide into his bones like heat. But when Jace stepped off the elevator that morning, Dylan walked right past him in the hallway without so much as a twitch of acknowledgement. Not even eye contact. Jace's grin faltered. Gah, that hurt a little. He followed Dylan with his gaze until the man disappeared into conference room 6, the one usually reserved for high-level briefings. Jace exhaled. Fine. If Dylan wanted silence, he would get silence. For now. By midday, Jace's nerves were fried. His keyboard clicks were too loud, his iced coffee too watery, his focus non-existent. He kept replaying Dylan's words. If you tease me again, I'll make sure you learn what consequences feel like. Jace rubbed a hand through his hair, groaning. He didn't think he'd ever wanted consequences so badly. As he was finishing a report, a notification blinked onto his screen. Meeting request. From Dylan Marlowe. Onto his screen. Meeting request. From Dylan Marlowe. Location, Sub-Level 2 Security Wing. Time now. Jace stared. Sub-Level 2 wasn't exactly forbidden, but nobody went there without a reason. It was where all the risk assessments, secure files, and investigative teams worked. It was private, quiet, controlled. A perfect place to enforce consequences. Jace's stomach tightened, half dread, half thrill. He clicked accept before his brain had a chance to argue. The elevator hummed as it descended, each floor taking him deeper into a part of the building most employees never saw. When the doors opened, the air smelled faintly of steel and faint cologne. Clean, crisp, disciplined. Dylan. Jay stepped out. The hallway was empty, lined with quiet glass offices and motion-activated lights. A single door at the end remained open, revealing a large room with screens, files, and a long conference table. Dylan stood waiting. He didn't turn when Jace entered. He didn't greet him. He simply closed a file, set it down, and spoke. Shut the door. Jace obeyed. The click echoed like a lock sliding into place. Dylan finally faced him. And God, the look in his eyes made Jace's breath stutter. Come. Control. Danger wrapped in composure. You accepted the meeting, Dylan said. You invited me, Jace countered. I wanted to see if you would come. And what if I didn't? Dylan stepped closer. Then we wouldn't be having this conversation. Jace smirked. What conversation is that? The one where I lay out your consequences. Jace's pulse jumped hard. Dylan moved closer, slow and deliberate, until Jace could feel warmth radiating from him again. He walked around him, not touching, simply circling like a predator, deciding how much restraint he wanted to keep. Last night, Dylan said softly, I warned you. You did, and you didn't listen. Jace's throat bobbed. Listening isn't really my specialty. I noticed. Dylan stopped behind him. Jace felt rather than saw him lean in, close enough for a breath of air to brush the back of his neck. You're reckless, Dylan murmured. Provocative. Constantly crossing lines you don't understand. Jace closed his eyes, breath shaky. Maybe I want to understand. Dylan's low exhale ghosted over his skin. Do you? A shiver rolled through Jace's spine. Yes. Dylan stepped in front of him again, meeting his eyes. Every inch of him was composed, too composed. I'm giving you one chance to walk away, he said. If you do, we forget this conversation. I go back to ignoring you. You go back to your marketing campaigns. And if I stay? Jace whispered. Dylan's voice dropped to something quiet, dark, and devastatingly patient. Then you follow my rules. Jace swallowed. What rules? Rule 1 was delivered simply, directly, without hesitation. Don't lie to me. Jace blinked. I don't. You do, Dylan said. You hide behind jokes. You deflect with teasing. You mask what you feel. You think you're subtle, Jace, but you're not. Heat flooded Jace's cheeks. Maybe I just... Don't lie. Jace inhaled chest tight. Okay, good. Dylan's tone warmed by a fraction, approval. Then tell me why you keep provoking me. Jace hesitated. Dylan waited. His gaze didn't waver. He didn't push. He didn't threaten. He simply listened. And that was somehow more terrifying. Finally, Jace exhaled. Because you don't react to anyone else. Everyone tiptoes around you. But with me, you look at me. You talk to me. You stop me. Dylan's eyes darkened. So you force my attention. Yes. The confession slipped free like a breath he'd been holding for weeks. I want your attention. Dylan's jaw clenched, not in anger, but something warmer. Something far more dangerous. Good, he murmured. Because now you have it. Jace's breath stuttered. Dylan stepped even closer. Have it. Jace's breath stuttered. Dylan stepped even closer, leaving barely an inch between them. Rule 2, Dylan said quietly. If you tease me, intentionally, there will be consequences. Jace's heartbeat kicked hard. And what kind of consequences are we talking about? He asked. Dylan's lips curved into the faintest, slowest smirk Jace had ever seen from him. The kind you won't forget. Jace's knees nearly gave out. Before he could respond, Dylan added, Rule 3. When we're alone, his fingers brush Jace's chin, barely there, but enough to fire every nerve in Jace's body. You don't challenge my authority unless you're prepared to lose. Jace's breath dragged in. And if I want to lose? Dylan's eyes flickered with heat. Then tease me. Something inside Jace snapped. Desire coiled so tight, he felt dizzy. He lifted his hand, lightly pressing 2 fingers against Dylan's chest. Not a push. Not a challenge. A tease. Dylan inhaled sharply. Oh, Jace whispered, I think I just did. Dylan didn't move for half a second. Then he did. He stepped forward, pinning Jace lightly, but unarguably, against the conference table. His hands didn't touch Jace yet, but the proximity, the authority, the promise in his eyes. Jace's breath trembled. "So be it," Dylan said softly. "You want your first consequence?" Jace nodded, unable to speak. Dylan leaned in, lips grazing Jace's ear barely. "Then don't tease someone like me," he whispered, "unless you're willing to be handled." Jace exhaled shakily. God help him. He was more than willing. Dylan slowly stepped back, reclaiming composure inch by inch. "That's all for today," he said, voice steady again. Claiming composure inch by inch. "That's all for today," he said, voice steady again. "Report to my office tomorrow morning." "Alone?" Jace gaped. "That's it. For now," Dylan replied, walking toward the door. "I don't rush lessons." He paused, hand on the handle without turning. "And Jace?" Jace swallowed. "Yes. You're in far deeper than you realize." The door opened, and Jace realized with a wild rush of heat through his chest. He didn't want to weigh out. Jace didn't sleep that night. How could he? His brain replayed every second in that quiet security room. Dylan's rules, his voice, the heat of his breath against Jace's voice. Skin. The moment Dylan pinned him to the table with nothing but proximity and authority. It was intoxicating, dangerous, addicting. By morning, Jace was a mess of nerves and anticipation. He practically catapulted out of the elevator and forced himself not to run toward Dylan's office. He paused outside the door, inhaled, exhaled, then knocked. "Come in." The moment Jace stepped inside, something in the air shifted. Dylan wasn't behind his desk. He was standing, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, reviewing files. And he looked different, calmer, controlled, but aware of Jace in a way that felt hotter than any physical touch. "You're early," Dylan said. "You said come alone. You didn't say when." One of Dylan's eyebrows lifted. "Already breaking rules?" Jace's lips curled. "Already giving consequences?" Dylan closed the folder with precise, slow movements. "Careful. You keep saying that," Jace murmured. "And I keep not listening." Dylan took a step toward him, then another. "That's because you think you're in control." Jace's heart stumbled. Then another. "That's because you think you're in control." Jace's heart stumbled. "I'm not." Dylan leaned one hand on the desk, bringing him eye level with Jace. Not even a little. Heat swarmed Jace's chest. But before he could respond, the door swung open without a knock. "Dylan, did you receive the O?" A voice Jace despised instantly. Leon. Of course it was him. Leon, coworker, self-proclaimed office flirt, and someone who had made it painfully obvious he had a thing for Dylan. He stood in the doorway, folders in hand, eyes narrowing with immediate, bitter jealousy. "Didn't know you had company," Leon said, gaze flicking over Jace like an insult. Jace didn't bother hiding his smirk. Surprise. Dylan straightened, his expression shifting into his professional mask. "Leon, what do you want?" Leon practically preened. "Just delivering the executive risk analysis you asked for." He stepped forward, deliberately brushing past Jace. Dylan accepted the folder without looking at him. Leon lingered, always lingering. "You know," Leon added, his tone drenched in false sweetness, "if you ever need help with anything, I'm always available. Day or night." Jace rolled his eyes so hard it hurt. Dylan didn't blink. Noted, but Leon wasn't done. His gaze slithered back to Jace. "Some of us actually belong in this department." "Oh," Jace said. "Then why does Dylan look more annoyed when you talk than when I do?" Leon's jaw tightened. Dylan's voice cut through the tension. "Leon, that will be all." Leon's face pinched with annoyance as he turned to leave. But just before the door shut, he threw a final dagger at Jace. Some people should learn their place. The door clicked shut. Silence. Charged tight, electric. Dylan exhaled slowly. "You didn't need to escalate that." "Oh, come on." Jace smirked. "You can't tell me you didn't enjoy watching him squirm." Dylan's gaze dropped to Jace's mouth for a fraction of a second. Quick, controlled, devastating. "Jealousy doesn't suit you." Quick, controlled, devastating. "Jealousy doesn't suit you," Dylan murmured. Jace's breath caught. "Who said I was jealous of him? Weren't you?" Dylan asked softly. "Yes," Jace whispered before he could stop himself. I was. Dylan inhaled, something dangerous simmering behind his eyes. Then you really don't understand what you're doing to me. Jace blinked. What am I doing? Dylan took a step closer. Testing me. Maybe I want to see if you'll break. I won't break. Jace's pulse jumped. But you reacted. That wasn't a reaction. Dylan's voice dipped lower. That was restraint. Jace's knees nearly buckled. Before either of them could say another word, Dylan moved. Not touching but close. Before either of them could say another word, Dylan moved. Not touching but close. Too close. His hand lifted, hovering inches from Jace's jaw, not quite daring to make contact. I told you, Dylan murmured, when you tease me, there are consequences. Jace's breath hitched. Then give me one. Dylan's eyes burned. Consequence one, he said quietly. You don't get to provoke me in front of others. If you want my attention, you earn it privately. Jace's stomach tightened. And consequence two? Dylan leaned in, slow, deliberate, devastating. Consequence two, he said, is that you don't get my touch until I say so. Jace's breath shattered. His whole body felt like it was suspended between wanting and waiting. That's not fair, Jace whispered. It isn't supposed to be fair. Jace stepped closer, intentionally brushing their shoes. What if I tease you right now? A muscle in Dylan's jaw jumped. Then I walk away, Dylan said, and you don't get anything from me for a week. Jace's mouth went dry. He wasn't sure if it was desire or panic, but it hit his chest like fire. Dylan watched the realization settle in. His voice softened into something deep and hypnotic. You're not the only one who can play with control, Jace. Jace swallowed hard. And what do you want me to do now? Leave, Dylan said. Think about what you want from me. And then tomorrow? Dylan's gaze locked on him, pure, deliberate heat hidden beneath composure. Tomorrow, he murmured, you'll come back, and you'll stop pretending you don't crave consequences. Jace exhaled, breath trembling. Dylan opened the door for him. And this time, Jace knew the truth. He wasn't the one teasing anymore. Dylan was. And Jace. He was falling fast, hard, willingly. Jace didn't walk into work the next morning. He floated. Every nerve in him was tuned to one frequency, Dylan. He barely remembered getting dressed, barely tasted the coffee he spilled twice, barely managed to wave off his coworkers, asking why he looked distracted. Distracted didn't cover it. He was a live wire buzzing under his skin. Dylan had told him to think about what he wanted. Jace had, all night, and the answer was embarrassingly simple. He wanted Dylan to lose control. Just once. Just enough to prove that beneath all that cold steel and disciplined Jace was the one person who got under his skin. At 9:58 a.m., Jace stood outside Dylan's office door. 9:59, his pulse hammered. 10 o'clock. He knocked. Come in. Jace stepped inside and froze. Dylan wasn't behind a desk. He wasn't reading files. He wasn't even pretending to be composed. He was leaning against the edge of the desk, arms folded, sleeves rolled up, gaze locked on Jace like he'd been waiting with every breath. And God, he looked dangerous. You're on time, Dylan said. You told me to be. I told you to come back, Dylan corrected. Not how quickly. Jace's lips curled. Were you hoping I'd come early? Quickly? Jace's lips curled. Were you hoping I'd come early? Dylan stared at him for 3 long seconds before saying, yes. Jace swallowed. Art. The room felt smaller, filled with something thick and heavy. Anticipation, tension, desire swirling like heat. Close the door, Dylan said. Jace obeyed. The soft click echoed through him like a pulse. When he turned back, Dylan's gaze had dipped. The soft click echoed through him like a pulse. When he turned back, Dylan's gaze had dipped, slowly tracing Jace's face, his throat, his chest, as if cataloging him. Jace felt seen, exposed, wanted. A shiver chased down his spine. What did you think about? Dylan asked. You, Jace said. Too fast. Too honest. A flash of heat crossed Dylan's eyes. And what about me? I've never met someone who could shut me up. Dylan stepped forward once. I could. Oh, I know, Jace whispered. That's the problem. Is it? Dylan's voice softened into something velvety and low. Jace gazed at him, pulse jumping. Depends on what you want to shut me up with. Dylan inhaled sharply, controlled but not controlled enough. He reached out, gripping Jace's chin gently, forcing their eyes to meet. You're playing with fire, and you're acting like you don't like being burned. Dylan's fingers tightened just slightly, enough to ground Jace, enough to make him shiver. Last warning, Dylan murmured. If I stop holding back, it won't be gentle. Jace leaned in, breath brushing Dylan's lips. That wasn't gentle. Dylan exhaled and snapped. One hand slid to Jace's waist, pulling him forward, pinning him firmly against the desk behind Dylan. Not rough, not painful, just possessive enough to make Jace's breath catch. You really don't understand what you do to me, Dylan said, voice low and raw. Jace's heart stumbled. Then show me. Dylan's forehead touched Jace's breath, warm, controlled but cracking at the edges. I'll try to keep distance. I'll try to stay professional. But you, he huffed a quiet laugh, almost frustrated. You walk in here with your smirks and your questions and your provocations. Because I wanted you to lose control, Jace whispered. Because you're impossible to read, and it drove me insane. Dylan's hand moved to the back of Jace's neck, fingers threading through his hair, pulling him just slightly closer. You want to know what I feel? Dylan whispered. Jace nodded, barely breathing. This, Dylan said, is what restraint looks like. And then, slowly, achingly slowly, he dragged his thumb across Jace's lower lip. Jace's breath shattered. His knees weakened. His whole body tensed with wanting. Dylan? Not yet, Dylan murmured. I'm not finished. He tilted Jace's chin up, studying him like he was something precious, dangerous, necessary. You want consequences, he said. Fine. Here's one. He leaned closer, lips grazing Jace's cheek, but deliberately avoiding his mouth. You don't get to kiss me, Dylan whispered. Not until you admit what you really want. Jace trembled. Say it, Dylan insisted. No jokes. No teasing. Jace exhaled shakily, fingers curling into Dylan's shirt. I want you. Dylan's breath hitched. I want your attention. Jace continued, voice cracking. I want your hands on me. I want. Dylan's hands tightened. You to lose control for me. That did it. Dylan's restraint crumbled like thin glass. He cupped Jace's jaw with both hands and kissed him, deep, fierce, consuming, every ounce of tension finally igniting into heat. Jace gasped against his mouth. Dylan pulled him closer, lifting him just slightly onto the desk, devouring every soft sound Jace let slip. Just slightly onto the desk, devouring every soft sound Jace let slip. His hands bracketed Jace's hips, firm and possessive as if holding back weeks, months of bottled desire. Jace kissed him back like he'd been starving for it, because maybe he had. When they finally broke apart, both of them breathless, Dylan rested his forehead against Jace's. That, Dylan whispered, voice hoarse, was me losing control. Jace almost laughed, giddy, breathless, wrecked. You can lose it again. Anytime. Dylan chuckled softly, pulling him close. Careful. Now you know what that unlocks. Jace smiled, running his thumb along Dylan's jaw. I'm not scared of you. Dylan kissed his cheek, slow and deliberate. You should be. But Jace only pulled him in again, whispering against his mouth. Then teach me. And Dylan's lips curved in a dark, promising smile. The kind that said this was only the beginning.